I, 24M, never thought I'd be writing this, but here we are. 6 months ago, I walked away from everything I knew. And today, I finally got my revenge. Let me start from the beginning. My mom died when I was 16. Cancer took her slowly, and Mark and I held each other together through those dark months. For 8 years, it was just us against the world. We had our routines, our inside jokes, our way of honoring Alina's memory. Mark would make her famous Sunday pancakes every week, and we'd watch her favorite old movies together. The house still smelled like her perfume in certain corners, and neither of us had the heart to change anything. Then, Mark met Vanessa at his office Christmas party last year. She was younger, maybe early 30s, with perfectly styled blonde hair and a smile that seemed to calculate everything. At first, I was happy for him. Elena had been gone for years, and Mark deserved companionship. But Vanessa moved fast, too fast. Within 3 months, she was practically living at our house. Within 6 months, Mark proposed. The wedding was small, rushed, and felt nothing like the celebration of love it should have been. Vanessa insisted on changing everything immediately. Alina's photos came down from the mantel. Her garden got ripped up for a modern patio. The Sunday pancake tradition ended because Vanessa was gluten-free. But the real blow came during their honeymoon planning. I was sitting at the kitchen table scrolling through my phone when Vanessa walked in with a stack of paint samples and fabric swatches. She spread them across the table like battle plans. She told me they were redecorating the entire house. A fresh start, she called it. When I mentioned that some of Alina's things were still in the master bedroom, Vanessa's expression hardened. She said it was time to let go of the past and start over completely. She suggested I might be happier finding my own place, since I was old enough and the house would be better suited for their new life together. Mark walked in during this conversation, and I waited for him to defend me, to defend Alina's memory. Instead, he nodded along. He said Vanessa had a point about starting fresh. He suggested I look into apartments closer to my job. The words hit me like physical blows. That night, I lay in bed staring at the ceiling of the room I'd lived in since childhood. The glow-in-the-dark stars Elena had helped me put up when I was 10 still dotted the ceiling. By morning, I made my decision. I spent the next week quietly packing. Not everything. Just the essentials and the few things of Elena's I'd managed to save. I found a furnished studio apartment across town and put down a deposit. I transferred my portion of the family phone plan to my own account. I even changed my emergency contacts at work. The morning I left, Mark was at his office and Vanessa was at her yoga class. I loaded my car with 3 boxes and a suitcase. I left my key on the kitchen counter next to a simple note that said I was taking their advice about starting over and forgetting the past. I didn't answer their calls. I didn't respond to their texts. When Mark showed up at my work, I had security escort him out. I blocked them on social media and changed my phone number. If they wanted me erased from their life so badly, I'd make it easy for them. The first few months were brutal. I threw myself into work, picked up freelance projects, and slowly built a life that didn't include them. I made new friends, started dating someone wonderful, and began to heal. But I never forgot what they'd said. Start over. Forget the past. Those words echoed in my head every single day. Then opportunity knocked in the most unexpected way. Update 1. 3 months into my disappearance, I got a call from Alina's sister, my Aunt Marlene. She lived in Oregon and we'd lost touch over the years, but she'd been trying to reach me. Apparently, Alina's parents had left a trust fund that I was supposed to inherit on my 25th birthday. The lawyers had been trying to contact me through Mark, but he'd been giving them the runaround. The amount was substantial, not life-changing money, but enough to make a real difference. More importantly, Aunt Marlene told me something I'd never known. Elena had owned a small property downtown, a little building with a coffee shop on the ground floor, and an apartment upstairs. After she died, Mark had been managing it, collecting rent, handling maintenance. I'd never seen a penny of that income. I hired a lawyer, a good one. We discovered that Mark had been depositing the rental income into a joint account with Vanessa. They'd been using my inheritance to fund their new life together. The coffee shop lease was up for renewal, and they'd been planning to sell the building to cash out completely. My lawyer was thorough. We found every document, every transaction, every penny they'd taken. The case was airtight, but I didn't want to drag this through courts for years. I wanted something more immediate, more personal. That's when I remembered their own words. Start over. Forget the past. I had my lawyer draft a very specific letter. It outlined every legal violation, every penny they owed me, and every consequence they'd face if this went to court. But then I offered them an alternative. They could sign over the building to me immediately along with all the back rent they'd collected, plus interest. In exchange, I'd agree to start over and forget the past, just like they'd suggested. The kicker was the timeline. They had exactly 1 week to decide, and the offer would expire at midnight on the anniversary of the day I'd left their house. I had the letter delivered to their door by a process server on a Tuesday morning. I knew Vanessa would be home because she'd posted about her new Tuesday morning Pilates class on social media. Yes, I'd been keeping tabs. The response was immediate and explosive. Mark called my old number dozens of times before realizing I changed it. Vanessa tried reaching me through my work email, alternating between fury and fake sweetness. They showed up at my old apartment building, harassing my former neighbors. They even tried to get information from my college friends. But I covered my tracks well. My new life was completely separate from my old one. They had no way to reach me except through my lawyer. And he was under strict instructions to only discuss the legal matter at hand. On Thursday, Mark managed to corner one of my coworkers in a coffee shop near my office. He begged her to pass along a message. He said he was sorry, that he'd made mistakes, that he wanted to make things right. But he also said I was being unreasonable, that family should forgive and forget. That I was destroying his marriage over a misunderstanding. My coworker, bless her, told him exactly what I'd coached her to say if this happened. She said, I'd mentioned that some people think starting over means everyone else should forget the past while they get to keep all the benefits. She said it sounded like a tough situation and walked away. Friday came and went with no response from their lawyer. Saturday morning, Vanessa posted a long rant on Facebook about ungrateful children and family loyalty. She didn't mention me by name, but everyone who knew our situation could read between the lines. She talked about how hard it was to blend families, how some people couldn't let go of grudges, how she tried so hard to build bridges. The comments were interesting. Several people pointed out that blending families required effort from everyone, not just the children. A few of Mark's old friends made pointed remarks about the importance of honoring the memory of deceased spouses. Elena's old friends were less subtle. They remembered how much Elena had loved that little coffee shop, how she dreamed of fixing it up someday. Sunday night, with less than 24 hours left on the deadline, their lawyer finally called mine. They wanted to negotiate. They'd agreed to sign over the building, but they wanted to keep half the back rent. They claimed they'd put money into maintaining the property, that they deserved compensation for their time and effort. My lawyer's response was beautiful. He told them that people who wanted to start over and forget the past shouldn't be worried about compensation for past efforts. He reminded them that the offer expired at midnight Monday and that after that we'd be pursuing full legal action for fraud, breach of fiduciary duty, and theft. Monday morning, Vanessa called my lawyer directly, bypassing their attorney. She was crying, saying this was destroying their marriage, that Mark was having panic attacks, that they couldn't afford to lose the building income. She begged for more time, for a payment plan, for anything. My lawyer, following my instructions perfectly, told her that I understood how difficult it could be when someone's past caught up with them. He said that unfortunately, I'd learned from some very wise people that sometimes you just have to start over and forget the past. He reminded her that she had until midnight to accept the original offer. At 11:47 p.m., 13 minutes before the deadline, their lawyer sent over the signed documents. The building was mine. The back rent was mine. All of it, but I wasn't done. The next morning, I drove to the coffee shop for the first time since Elena died. It was exactly as I remembered it, just shabbier. The tenant, an elderly man named Joe, was surprised to see me. He remembered me as a kid coming in with Elena to check on things. Joe told me he'd been worried about the lease renewal. Mark and Vanessa had been talking about selling, and he couldn't afford the rent increases the new owners would probably demand. He'd been running this little coffee shop for 15 years and it was his whole life. I told Joe not to worry about the lease. I told him I was Elena's son and that she would have wanted him to stay as long as he wanted. I cut his rent in half and offered to help him fix up the place. The look of relief and gratitude on his face was worth everything. But the real satisfaction came that afternoon. I had my lawyer send one final letter to Mark and Vanessa. It thanked them for teaching me such valuable lessons about starting over and forgetting the past. It informed them that I was following their advice completely. I was starting over with Alina's building, and I was forgetting the past we'd shared as a family. The letter concluded by noting that since they'd been so insistent about the importance of moving forward without looking back, I was sure they'd understand why I wouldn't be maintaining any contact with them going forward. After all, they'd made it clear that the past should stay in the past. I had copies of the letter sent to several of their friends and Mark's coworkers along with a brief explanation of the situation. I wanted everyone to know exactly how their advice about starting over had worked out. It's been 3 months since I reclaimed Alina's building. Joe and I have become good friends, and the coffee shop is thriving. I moved into the apartment upstairs, and every morning I wake up surrounded by the smell of fresh coffee and the sound of Joe greeting his regular customers. I found some of Alina's old plans for the building in a box in the apartment's closet. She'd sketched out ideas for expanding the coffee shop, adding a small bookstore section, maybe hosting community events. I'm making those dreams a reality, one step at a time. Mark and Vanessa's marriage didn't survive the financial strain. Vanessa filed for divorce 2 months ago, citing irreconcilable differences. Mark tried to reach out to me through Aunt Marlene, but I told her I was following his wife's advice about starting over and forgetting the past. The building is worth twice what they thought it was. The neighborhood is gentrifying and property values are skyrocketing. Joe's coffee shop has become a local landmark, and I've got developers calling weekly with offers to buy. I'm not selling. This place is Alina's legacy, and now it's mine, too. Sometimes I wonder if I was too harsh. Then, I remember sitting at that kitchen table, listening to Vanessa explain how I needed to disappear from their new life. I remember Mark nodding along, choosing his new wife over his son's place in the family home. They taught me that family loyalty only goes one way. That the past only matters when it's convenient. That starting over means erasing anything that doesn't fit your new narrative. I learned those lessons well. The funny thing about telling someone to start over and forget the past is that you can't control what they choose to remember and what they choose to forget. You can't dictate which parts of the past they'll use to build their new future. I started over just like they wanted. I forgot our past as a family, just like they suggested. But I remembered Elena. I remembered her dreams. And I remembered exactly how it felt to be erased from my own life. Now I'm building something new on the foundation of what they tried to take away. Every morning I make Alina's famous pancakes in the apartment kitchen. Every Sunday I watch her favorite movies. The building smells like coffee and possibility instead of loss and regret. I kept their advice about starting over and forgetting the past. I just applied it more selectively than they expected. Some things are worth forgetting. Others are worth building a whole new life around. They wanted me erased from their story. Instead, I erased them from mine and wrote a better ending.